Yuji would have looked on wide-eyed as his gaze met Mahito. He could tell now just off that he was going to be in a pretty large disadvantage. Both he and Mahito had landed a black flash already and were fighting rather evenly, but now Mahito was showing off this. Mahito was showing off this powerful form, with 4 arms, more durable skin, and those 2 serpent heads. Even with that though, Yuji wasn't going to give up either. He then heard a chuckle come out from Sukuna, as Sukuna's voice said, "Mockery truly is the best form of flattery." Though in truth, Sukuna partly wished that Mahito was a human and not a curse. If Mahito was a human, he would have taken him as a vessel, but because of Mahito being a curse, he wouldn't be able to reincarnate in him. It truly was a shame, but that was just how things were meant to be. And while Yuji did hear the comment from Sukuna, he didn't say anything about it. Instead, he focused on Mahito. He was going to need to think on a way to win. Think on how to win, as he clamped his hands together and activated a piercing blood, firing out at Mahito, going for his chest. And as the piercing blood flew at Mahito, Mahito opened up his own body, preparing to take it head on. And the piercing blood hit him head on, which ended up pushing Mahito back, as small cracks formed on his armor, but nothing too noticeable. Yuji did have some hope though. This was going to be a long battle, but he would just need to build up enough damage in one point, then hit it with a black flash and flowing red scale burst. If he did that at 100% of his power, he should have a good chance at this. However, this was when the 2 serpent heads began to speak at once, as they both began to say, "Flesh and bones, marrow, death god." And the moment they were done, the armor began to repair itself, the cracks fading as Mahito began to speak. "Did you know every sorcerer and cursed spirit has chance and hand signs they can do to upgrade their abilities? Most people don't use it because it takes too much time and is a real sign of lack of skill. But I find that a bit foolish of an approach. Granted, it is a bit different from me, considering I can make parts of my body to fight alongside those, so I don't really have any drawbacks from that." And that made Yuji gulp a bit. After all, before this, Mahito was already stronger than Jogo, but now, Mahito was in a completely different league than what Jogo was. While he already knew this was going to be a hard fight, he wasn't expecting it to be this hard of a fight. But in order for him to win, he needed to at least deal with the serpent mouths. If he could, then he would be able to actually start doing damage improperly to Mahito. This was when Mahito decided it was his turn to take the offense, as he quickly closed the distance and attempted to punch Yuji in the face, not just punching him with one of his arms, but both of his arms, on his left side as Yuji just narrowly lifted up his arm in order to block. At the same time, he activated blood armor in order to take the blow, as he was launched back by the impact. Noticeably though, the blood armor actually broke from that punch. The true form itself wasn't actually that much of a power upgrade. It was stronger than his normal form by quite a bit, but the real power upgrade come from the fact that he now had 4 arms. After all, now he could hit Yuji with double the force, effectively making it so every single time he landed a punch, it would be like 2 punches landed rather than 1. Mahito wasn't done yet, as he didn't let Yuji get away that easy, as he used his upper right hand to grab Yuji by the face, his lower left hand and right hand to grab Yuji's arm, and finally his upper left arm to not just slam Yuji hard onto the ground, but also punch him hard in the gut. This resulted in a crater going even deeper in from Mahito's physical force as Yuji coughed up some blood. However, this was when the blood hardened as Yuji fired them at Mahito in a close range, while pushing Mahito off his body and hopping away, as Yuji coughed a bit. This was a first. For the first time he felt he might actually be outpacing close quarters combat. No, he wouldn't give up yet. This was something he could handle and he would have to handle. After all, no one else could. No one else in Shibuya could handle Mahito right now other than him, so this was a battle he would need to win. As the hardened blood hit Mahito head-on, doing no damage to Mahito, before Mahito slowly looked up to Yuji with a wide grin on his face, as the 2 serpent mouths opened while Mahito lifted up his 4 arms. Out from the mouths, hardened flesh spears were launched out at Yuji, while Mahito began to make hand signs through all 4 of his arms to amp the flesh spears that were being sent at him. As Yuji then compressed blood towards his feet and had it explode in order for him to hop out the way of the flesh spears, just barely managing to dodge all of them as one of them scraped past his leg, and he just barely managed to avoid it as the scrape was healed. As Yuji then hopped out from the crater they were in, now returning to the surface as he thought to himself, "I'll need to use the buildings to my advantage," as he was thankful that they were still in a relatively abandoned area. He was going to take advantage of that as he hopped into one of the buildings. Mahito then jumped out from the crater while looking around, as it was then a piercing blood was launched out from the building in front of Mahito, going right for his face. Mahito slid underneath it though, dodging it before a wide smile rose on him as he looked to the building, as the serpent head began to chant once more. Body, will, soul. Mahito had several chants. The one he used previously was to help prepare his instant spirit body of distorted killing. This chant, though, was made to give him a physical amp, amping his abilities for one move by 120%. Under a normal circumstance, chants would not be able to help a sorcerer in terms of their physical body. However, because of the fact that Mahito was currently using his curse technique to amplify his physical body, he could use chants in order to make himself stronger. As Mahito then jumped at the building while causing the ground underneath his feet to crack, moving at a blinding speed and rushing right towards it, breaking right through it and causing the building to collapse as he did so while saying, "Whoops, still gotta get used to this." However, as the building began to collapse, several hardened blood arrows were sent flying down towards Mahito from the building, but it wasn't able to do any damage to him. But suddenly he heard the sound of a heartbeat increase from behind him as Yuji activated Flowing Red Scale Burst while focusing curse energy towards his fist as he rushed towards Mahito and landed a punch on Mahito's back. However, this punch was a black flash as Mahito was sent flying, and Mahito groaned, feeling his back crack quite a bit from that strike, some parts of his back also falling off as shards. But that pain that was on Mahito was replaced with a confident grin as he turned around to look at Yuji. He was very much going to enjoy this. As one of the two serpent heads began to chant once more, "Flesh and bone, marrow, death god," as they said that chant over and over again, Yuji then closed the distance and began to unleash a flurry of punches on Mahito. Thanks to the black flash, his heart was able to heal even faster than it was a minute ago. Furthermore, Yuji's punches felt even more refined, even sharper than they were before. Granted, he knew that was because of the black flash, but still, he had to admit it was impressive, as Mahito was able to deflect and block several of the hits. However, Mahito then took advantage of his forearms, as he used two of his arms in order to deflect two of Yuji's punches, while at the same time landing two punches on Yuji's chest. However, Yuji was quick to adapt himself, as at the same time he landed a kick on Mahito's gut. This resulted in a distance forming between the two of them and a smile forming on Yuji, after Yuji could sense it. During their little hand-to-hand scuffle, Mahito's back had not fully finished healing yet. It was going to take a while to heal off Black Flash wounds, which meant right now at least Mahito had a weak point being his back, and the more and more damage he could do to his back, the more and more time it would take to heal it properly. As Yuji then punched his fists together, resulting in them turning completely red, before activating blood armor, resulting in the fists darkening, as curse energy flared up around his hands as well. However, where most would be afraid of this confidence or be a bit more cautious, Mahito just seemed to be happier and gladly accepted Yuji's challenge. He could tell that he was more confident that he could win, and Mahito could tell Yuji had found the key to hurting him. But Mahito was not afraid. In fact, he was excited as he said, "Let's both be reborn today, Itadori. Find our limits and crack them wide open." Where normally most people would be worried about an opening like this, be worried about a crack in their defenses, Mahito saw this as exciting. A room for him to evolve, find new inspiration through Yuji. The two would have made for excellent rivals if it wasn't for the circumstances present today. If Yuji was a curse or Mahito was a human, then they would have gotten along well. But that was the simple nature of the world. As the two rushed at each other once more, Yuji and Mahito's eyes filled with determination. Yuji opened up both of his hands and created two slicing exorcism discs. He then threw both of them out at Mahito, aiming for his upper left and right arm, as Mahito blinked, questioning if Yuji really thought that he could cut off his hands that easy, as Mahito then punched right through both of the slicing exorcisms, getting blood all over his two hands. As looked back to see, Yuji was now right in front of him, as he went for a punch on Mahito's gut, but Mahito met that punch head-on by countering with one of his own, as Mahito attempted to use his two fists on his right side to land a punch on Yuji, but Yuji exploded some blood underneath his foot in order to launch himself over the fist, taking advantage of Mahito's momentum while clapping his hands together and firing out a piercing blood at his back. At that same moment, one of the serpent heads turned around to meet Yuji and opened their mouths, firing a flash spear in the way, making the piercing blood hit the spear instead of Mahito's back. As Yuji landed, he was immediately backhanded by Mahito, while he also landed a punch on Yuji's side to send him flying. Mahito had to admit he was impressed by Yuji's ingenuity. This was when the serpent head that fired the flesh spear at Yuji began to rapid fire flesh spears at Yuji, all the while the other serpent head continued to chant, as the back began to repair itself more and more. The opening that Yuji had made with the Black Flash was fleeting and fast. Yuji was going to need to reopen that wound and do it with an even harder blow. As Yuji began to narrowly move out of the way of the flesh spears that were coming at him, dodging every single one that he could. Thankfully, they weren't being amped by the serpent head chanting because it was focused on repairing Mahito's back, which was one advantage that he currently had. Yuji wasn't fast enough. He needed to find some way to be able to reach Mahito's back and attack him before Mahito could counterattack. Flowing red scale, while fast, wasn't fast enough to handle someone like Mahito. He could only use flowing red scale burst at the moment of attacking, so that was a no-go. He needed to find something else, some way to bypass this. As then, out from one of the serpent mouths, it opened wide, resulting in two small transfigured humans going into the ground, as the other continued to chant the healing chant. Mahito then said, "By the way, just cause I'm in this form doesn't mean I can't use my transfigured humans anymore," as the two small transfigured humans tunneled into the ground, while Mahito looked at Yuji, lifting up all four of his hands and rushing towards him. However, as he was running, Mahito himself began to chant rather than using one of the serpent mouths, as he said, "Body, will, soul," resulting in a speed increase for Mahito. Yuji decided to meet this head on as well, moving his own fist to clash against Mahito. However, Yuji then did something a bit more subtle. He used the bloody landed from the slicing exorcism to move Mahito's upper hands out the way, just barely, while Yuji tilted his head out the way as well in order to dodge the punch. He was just barely able to pull this off, but he was able to deflect Mahito's two upper hands, so he would just have to deal with Mahito's two lower hands. And in that moment, he clashed fists with Mahito, before the two of them began to repeatedly clash, Mahito shaking the blood off in the process. However, Yuji right now was actually keeping up. Thanks to landing a black flash previously, he was now fast enough to handle four arms of Mahito. Not fast to completely overwhelm Mahito, but fast enough to at least handle clashing with Mahito repeatedly, as well as deflecting some of his blows. However, the black flash was not the only thing that could be thanked. With each punch Yuji landed, Yuji's defenses became sharper, his punches also becoming sharper. He was becoming better and better with predicting Mahito's movements. In terms of strength, Mahito was still stronger, but Yuji was able to keep up with him in hand-to-hand. As he then hopped over Mahito, his heartbeat increasing once more with a flowing red scale burst, curse energy surrounding his fist as he was preparing to use another black flash. But Mahito was able to turn around just on time and focus curse energy towards his fist. One of the transfigured humans also jumped out from the ground and wrapped around Mahito's fist like a large claw as the two clashed black flashes once more. As both Yuji and Mahito were sent flying away from each other, the armor around Mahito's arm was heavily damaged and broken. The transfigured human that Mahito made was killed in the impact as well. Mahito's back was almost finishing recovering, so he decided to allocate resources somewhere else, leaving his back at 80%. Now the serpent began to chant in order to repair Mahito's armor around his arm. Yuji, on the other hand, landed on the ground a bit away from Mahito. The blood armor around Yuji's arm shattered completely as his RCT worked to heal away the wounds to his arm and his heart, before the blood shards from the blood armor flew back towards Yuji's arm and used some more blood in order to substitute that blood armor that was missing. A heavy breath came out from Yuji as he looked towards Mahito. Yuji was now on his third black flash while Mahito was on his second. The two's clash could be felt all throughout Shibuya by the sorcerers present. However, as Mahito's arm was repairing itself, Yuji spotted something that horrified him. Mahito had two fingers of Sukuna present. That was what he stole from Todo, and this was bad. Yuji knew the stakes now of losing. His body right now was still fighting to adapt to Sukuna, and if he was fed those fingers, then Sukuna would take over. If Sukuna took over, no one on either side in Shibuya would be able to stop him. However, suddenly out from the ground, two massive hands rose out, followed by the face of a humanoid attempting to grab Yuji. He was able to jump out the way, and he recognized this as the transfigured human that Mahito had launched out earlier, as he clapped his hands together, firing out a piercing blood right down towards the transfigured human and shooting it in the head, killing it. But this was just made to be a distraction by Mahito, as Mahito had appeared behind Yuji saying, "Let me pay you back now for earlier," focusing curse energy towards his fist and landing a black flash on Yuji's back, causing Yuji to cough up blood as he was sent flying into the ground, rather injured from the blow as he clutched onto the ground for a moment. Mahito then closed his distance, attempting to go for a punch on Yuji's face. At the same time, Yuji had his own counter as he went for a punch on Mahito's side. He couldn't activate Flowing Red Scale Burst this time, but he did activate the Black Flash. However, Mahito activated his own, which ended up sending Yuji flying as a chuckle came out from Mahito. As Yuji was being sent flying, the serpent had grabbed Yuji and pulled him back towards Mahito, as Mahito landed a punch on Yuji's chest, as the sound of ribs cracking could be heard. Mahito definitely broke something this time, and Mahito was laughing and cackling at Yuji, as he said, "Did you really think you could beat me alone? You needed Todo's help against Hanami, you needed 4 other sorcerers against Jogo, and now you tried to deal with me, the one who surpassed them both on your own?" As the serpent slammed Yuji down hard on the ground, Mahito then walked towards Yuji while forcing his mouth open. "I was going to kill you originally, to even the playing fields, but now, with everything, I believe we need it to be a bit more even. I need my own ally. Besides, no better way to make you suffer than forcing you to become the vessel of Sukuna once more." and he forced Yuji to consume the 2 fingers of Sukuna, allowing Sukuna to take control of the body while taking a step back, as he was curious to see what would happen, curious to see if this would even work. As it was then all across Shibuya, an evil source of curse energy could be felt. Mahito especially could feel it considering how close he was. It was so evil and so potent that even Mahito himself had to take a step back. He had to take a couple steps back in genuine fear before moving to bow properly. Thanks to landing a total of 4 black flashes, his body had successfully finished healing fully, in his true form, as he deactivated his true form, returning back to his normal form as well. As out from that evil wave of curse energy, Sukuna walked out, his body fully had healed, as he had to admit he was impressed. He was impressed by how much Yuji and Mahito were able to push each other, because this ended up helping Yuji's own body improve, which by extension ended up helping out Sukuna when he was active right now. While Yuji's control of manipulation wasn't on his level, he was still impressed with the battle that had been going on. And because Sukuna was in such a good mood, especially considering the fact that he knew where the rest of his fingers were, he decided to grant Mahito one wish, as he asked Mahito why did he make him manifest once more and what he wanted. He wanted Sukuna to take Yuji properly as his body. After all, there was no way to make Yuji suffer more than knowing he lost complete control to Sukuna, and considering right now it would be fully possible for him to make a binding vow or force Yuji into making a binding vow to give him complete control. However, Sukuna decided not to do that. After all, he had a different vessel he already wanted in mind. After all, while blood manipulation was most certainly interesting, he did want a bit more. So he did have a different vessel in mind in order to take. But he did make Mahito one offer. He said that if Mahito could land a total of 1 hit on this body, then he would kill every single person in Shibuya. And Mahito got back up, entering back into his true form and taking this